Welcome back, everyone. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE at our NYSE CUBE studios here on the East Coast. Of course, we have our Palo Alto studio connecting Silicon Valley and Wall Street, tech and money coming together. This is our Crypto Trailblazers series where we interview the leaders who have been blazing the trail in crypto, DeFi, now TradFi, front end, back end, entrepreneurs, money, the people making it happen from day one. A lot of great guests. We have a great guest who's been there from on the 2010 days. We're going to do a little walk through some of the historic key moments and what they mean today. Maja Vujinovic is here, FG Nexus, publicly traded company on the NASDAQ. Great to have you on. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, John, for having me. This is great.
On the intro, I mentioned 2010, and I think it's important to note that, at that time, Bitcoin was like 12 cents, 22 cents. Now it's 100,000, but it was still early days, alternative form of currency, a lot of Silk Road stuff, so it was just now coming out the paper, and then obviously went, the rest is history, and this, go back a few years, it was still lower priced, but now, obviously, store of value, historic. They don't make any more of it. It's scarce. It's a real great store of value. It's gold, as they say. In the early days, you have been there. You've seen the revolution grow, the importance of the international piece. I'd like to explore that first. A lot to talk about with FG Nexus too, but let's talk about your history because I think it speaks to what's happening today in the US. If you look back at what happened, take us through the early days.
Yeah, sure, John. I think it is very interesting, particularly as you said, what's happening today and with the stablecoins and of using this technology for that. I think in early days, I was a pioneer in mobile payments in early 2000s in Africa and Latin America. And I think the only reason I saw the potential of Bitcoin when I read the white paper is because I was living in those markets and I saw how hard it was to receive my own salary, how to pay others, with everything from high interest rates to FX trades to just really even transferring money internationally was really difficult. So when I read the white paper in 2010 while I was living in Africa as I said, payments pioneer, I thought to myself, wow, I don't understand anything what it says here, but I did understand one thing, which was peer-to-peer. And that to me was a bit of a light bulb moment. Again, nobody knew where speculatively, right, the coin and the price would go, but I think for me, it was extremely important to say, wow, if I can do this peer-to-peer, and why do I need a bank? Yeah. And so I started going down the rabbit hole at that time, and then it led me to other things that I did in space.
I remember the early days of Bitcoin. We would give Bitcoins to each other just to share. Give a Bitcoin to your friend. Don't share it so they can use it. It's like, no, it's too expensive. You bring up a good point. I want to get into this. I think we're students of history here on theCUBE. We like to look back at why things happen and what conditions. The mobile payment really was in a great time because mobile computing was surging internationally as a penetration. People had more mobile phones in the emerging markets than computers. Internet connectivity as the digital divide, as they call it. Some say, no digital, but cell phones, mobile was preeminent. That brings commerce. That's right. You hit on that, but then you're like, okay, there's other things. There's like banking, like money movement. That's right. There's no World Bank thinking about all these things. So it really was the breeding ground for the incubation of what is now global currency. And that's huge. Now, take us to the next level because, all right, we saw the developers come in, the hardcore alpha geeks, pick up on the white paper. That's another progression. Yeah. They start building. Certainly, you got Ethereum, first programmable, smart contracts, very interesting. Bitcoin, layer one, not really flexible. Yeah. In comes Ethereum, boom, tsunami with developers, Solidity, coding, cool things start happening. Take us from there. Yeah, sure. I think one thing I think you bring up is programmable money. I think, again, that was my second light bulb. Not, again, because I understood that this was going to go somewhere X in price, but also because of practical uses. And in 2013, when I started to get involved with the initial stages of Tether, I
also knew about Ethereum. And as I said, while I was at GE, I brought Joe Lubin to explore the Ethereum as a potential use case. And Joe Lubin himself would tell you that the leadership wasn't receptive at first times, but then we kept going back and second time and third time. And what I pieced together was, wait a second, if I can program anything in these smart contracts, then that means all of that learning that I had in emerging markets becomes possible. Because all of the difficulties that I had in emerging markets, they become actually possible with programmable money. Yeah. And so that's where I thought, well, maybe we should explore the capability of the programmable money in everything that we do in every different business vertical. And so I got to work, and that's where we launched the first trade finance deal between JPMorgan and GE, was on Ethereum as a pilot. And this was very early on, before Ethereum was even a discussion, outside of the cyberpunk
Maja,
rooms.
First of all, that's a pioneering, trailblazing moment. Some of those trailblazing moments can go up in flames, but like was early. What were some of the conversations like then? Because that was very early. What was it like? Because GE, a very well-known global multinational, huge industry player. Joe Rubin, Lubin starting, Consensus, that was developing. You had kind of the two worlds coming together.
There were very opposing worlds.
Take me through. Old, stodgy GE.
Exactly. And by the way, you don't just start a GE in a garage. That's an exceptional company with some exceptional people, and lots of GE's products we are going to use for many years to come. Yeah. It is an incredible company. It's also a company that really advertised and put forward a digital twinning, which is extremely compatible to crypto. Yeah. And so when I spoke to them first time, I said, look, on IoT, we need smart contracts. AI in the future is going to need a much faster highway to communicate on than the back office systems we have. Yeah. AI is going to need some kind of capacity in terms of paying each other in tokens, right? It's not going to be in putting dollars out on a table or Venmo, right? Yeah. It's going to need things to communicate on that are much faster. It wasn't their priority. And so I got kicked out of rooms a few times, and while I kept one foot in the degen, kind of as we say, degen ecosystem and a crypto native ecosystem. And when I met Joe Lubin, I thought this is an exceptional innovation that these guys are doing, and we need to somehow bridge those worlds. And so little by little, we brought them into the GE, and then later we did our own pilot thing, not just with Ethereum, but with many other things at GE. All
right, now take us through the next step of the journey, because the journey gets more interesting because you're also early pioneering stablecoins.
Yeah.
Take us through that history piece, because I think that's very instructing too.
Yeah, that's the piece you love, I think, the most. So
I love it. Well, I love the international. I didn't like the regime we had before in the US.
Sure.
No one did. Thank God that's over. But because you have commercialization happening rapidly now, but the tell signs were all happening around the early formations of stablecoin. Yeah, I mean, it might have been some bumps and bruises, but it's still the same game. Take us through what was going on at that time, because it sets the globalization conversation up.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to present in front of New York Fed in 2015, I think, on blockchain, and I remember them telling me in the room, don't you think we already thought about blockchain and digital dollar? We've been thinking about this since 1994. And I went, wow, what am I doing in this room telling them something that they've already kind of known about? So I do think this is something that has been at works and been studied by people who have been running our system. What I think is interesting is that Tether first launched a synthetic dollar on Ethereum. Right? That's really where it started. And Tether is massive today. For us and for me, what's really important is that I see Ethereum as a pure backbone of our financial system. I can tell you that in the next 20 to 30 years, the whole Wall Street will be tokenized. And I think that's fascinating, right? You're going from T3 to T0, and you go in an instant settlement. We're going to be living in a world of AI and I think that's going to need,
agents
as I said,
under the covers, doing things with software.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. And so I think, for me, the first introduction to stablecoins was emerging markets, really, where I saw inflation overnight. I saw it firsthand. I felt it on my own paycheck. And then coming to work in technology like this, seeing Tether, what they've created, I started to piece it together. And then in 2017 and 18, I already started talking about stablecoins as the main killer use case for crypto. And so what's most important here to understand is that we almost, to some extent, have an obligation to push the proliferation of stablecoins for the others in a certain markets where inflation is just rampant, right? We might not feel it here as much because we use credit card, we pay off our debt, right? But in other places, people feel it on their daily lives. And so
very
Ethereum,
unstable, the instability is brutal.
Exactly, and so Ethereum also plays a massive role in that because 65 to 75% of all stablecoins are built on Ethereum. And so we almost have a kind of a national security obligation to push Ethereum because we will be then pushing a US dollar globally around the world.
Yeah, and talk about the stablecoin because this is one of the biggest exciting areas I've seen in a long time. There's some other things I like MCP, which is a little bit more in their AI thing that's organically growing. But on the crypto side, the infrastructure, stablecoins really changes the game because now you can introduce the key elements on the financial side that allows things to take place. You mentioned some of the dynamics. What does that do in your mind? Why is it important for people to understand the role stablecoins play for the US and for the global economy? What is the key takeaway that people should understand, besides the fact that sometimes they might not be that stable, but that's okay, right? They're still stable. That's my opinion, I shouldn't say that, but I'll go ahead.
We're going into a world that is a barbell world, right? On one side, you're going to have full-on L1s launching like we've seen Tempo and Circle and and Google launching their own L1s, their own blockchains, right? To maximize and benefit from the data and capture all the payments, integrate vertically. And then there's Ethereum that is completely decentralized, and the world that is going to want to use Ethereum and the world that wants to use stablecoins. Reality is today that most of the emerging markets would rather hold a stablecoin of some sorts, be it Tether or Tron or whatever it is, versus their own local currency, right? They want USD because of instability, because of inflation. And so this is where very kind of helpful, I would always say, stablecoins do God's work in emerging markets, because if I wake up one day and I can't buy groceries because of massive amount of inflation, that directly impacts my family. And so I think stablecoins need to be understood, first of all, in that context. I know that some would potentially argue that stablecoins today are mostly used by traders, but yes, but they're also used by
your
folks.
Comment about the inflation is that the US dollar, USD, has backed up the stablecoin 1-to-1.
That's right.
So that means in a country that might have its own currency and
like
out of control.
Nigeria, Argentina,
fluctuations,
That's right.
all uncontrollable. Who knows the black box is going on in the black box. It's comfortable because if the merchants take crypto, it's just like a dollar.
That's right. Yeah, and they would rather take that than they would take their own local currency. We're seeing that more and more. I mean, stats are just coming out now, right? So that's I think that's a fascinating.
It's an extension of the U.S. dollar, basically.
It's an absolute extension of a U.S. dollar. And as I said earlier, I think what's been interesting with this administration, you brought it up earlier, is that this administration and Trump has realized that, look, this is something that we can use to our advantage. That is also one of the tools in the toolbox to backstop our debt. Right?
Explain that.
So we will be using stable coins, and this is why we passed the Genius Act as well, right? To put the US dollar in the hands of many people around the world.
Yeah, and that's going to help us. All right, so as we go forward, as we came into the 2018, 2019 timeframe, you saw the momentum slow down in the US, expands international, because of the US had a policy that was a headwind, say that politely, for this market. But that kept going internationally. Talk about that dynamic.
Yeah, very important point you bring up, because at that time, it's not like we were not doing anything. I think the major banks, in my opinion, almost kind of help pause that for a minute until they figured out where they play a role. Because technology usually moves faster than the politics, right? And we've seen that yesterday with the announcement of NASDAQ that wants to trade tokenized securities, right? This is going to inadvertently push the regulation to change the rules and reg on the tokenization. And so I think when I backpedal, I think all that was really kind of putting a pause until
Let's
folks
figure
like
it out.
JPMorgan figured out where their blockchain fits in,
And
right?
of course,
where
their
everybody
message
else
was,
fits.
"Oh, we're not working on anything."
But they were working on it since
around the clock.
2015. That's right. Yeah.
Around the clock too.
That's right.
Magical.
That's
Whoa!
right.
Look what we
Yeah.
have. But that's good R&D. I mean, I think this is smart money working. I mean,
Absolutely.
finance.
Yeah.
I mean, the term we've been kicking around here is smart risk on.
Yeah.
And the ones that had smart risk on mindset are doing well right now.
Yes.
The somewhat conservative risk on, catching up, risk off are way behind. So we're seeing that catch up now. Now that we're accelerated. The Genius Act, the Clarity Act, really good. Now you got, how do you regulate? So
now I think it's tokenization and decentralized finance, or DeFi,
Yeah.
right? That's the next step, because I do think that part of Wall Street would like to tap into the billions of dollars of decentralized capital,
Exactly.
that's out there.
Exactly.
And that's mostly, again, on Ethereum, which is another reason why we chose to launch a treasury vehicle on Ethereum.
Well, exciting history. It's such a great pleasure to have you on, give that history. Now let's get into what you're working on now.
Yeah, sure.
Talk about what's happening now. You got an exciting opportunity. Explain.
Yeah, and thanks, John, for that. It has been exciting, and it's been kind of cool to be part of that. A lot of pressure, I'm not going to lie. So a lot of pressure to really be able to explain and to be walking that thin line of innovation and regulation as well. Obviously, as you said, you can be on crazy spectrums of the both. So we 2 months ago we raised a $200 million pipe for Ethereum treasury vehicle, and we've deployed all of that into Ethereum. We are staking it all. What that means, we are actually contributing to the network, right? We are earning yield on our Ethereum. And we are exploring now really interesting opportunities with our partners like Galaxy Digital, who Mike Novogratz and I go back at early days of starting all this. And it's really exciting. I love the team, and that's been kind of cool for me to work and go back and work with that team again. And we're exploring really some interesting additional yield generations and DeFi. Obviously, we're being really careful around how we do that and what we do, but I think we owe that to our shareholders, and we owe it to kind of innovation of what we're trying to do on Ethereum, is to constantly push the boundaries and see what we can return that capital back to our shareholders.
And also blaze the trail, because you now have the major markets. One of the themes here in the Crypto Trailblazers, besides highlighting the leaders, is surfacing some of the trends. And one of the biggest trends is the mainstreaming of what was once an insider game.
That's right.
Which has been how things develop. That's just natural progression. Now it's like everyone's coming in, so here comes everybody.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. So I think we got to battle test the system. And the other thing I would like to get your reaction to is, one, that trend, here comes everybody, but also the entrepreneurial side of finance. We're starting to see entrepreneurship in finance unlike ever before. Now, entrepreneurship in technology has been there because it's been kind of a libertarian environment, not finance. Everything was kind of, the back office was contained. Yeah, you can maybe do some innovation, prepaid cards on someone else's network, but now you can actually take territory down.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Whole new ball game.
Yeah.
Welcome to the entrepreneurial finance. So you're seeing a lot of building going on. Young, talented, senior people in the industry leaving the big firms, saying, I could replicate that and do it better, smaller, faster, cheaper, better infrastructure, the plumbing. That's going to be tokenizing Wall Street.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. Absolutely. A lot of the folks I see from traditional finance, BlackRocks of the world, are leaving and really figuring out where those nooks that they can disrupt, and they can do it 10 times better. Yeah. And so I think this is the power of a combination. As I've said before, blockchain and AI are perfect marriage, right? And AI can't do without blockchain and at large scale. And so most folks that have worked in these traditional institutions are saying, hold on a second, I can actually have this cheaper, I can have it a shorter time, I can now pull in liquidity, because I think you mentioned earlier, a lot of the banks, right, never cared about a small guy, right? How do you bank a small guy? Nobody really cared. But now, because of the power of this technology, you're seeing also fintechs, right, such as Stripe and similar, are rising to almost become banks at some point, right? And so, and they are also faster to adopt blockchain because they have less regulatory hurdle. And so I think that's also interesting, where you're going to get a bit of a pushback, and we've seen that with Libra. Yeah. Libra was a no-no by the government to say, hey, you can't overstep on our financial ways, because if tomorrow Libra woke up with 2 billion users that they can distribute a coin to, that's a massive disruption.
And I think the other thing too is just to add to that is that other weird things happen that are good. Like for example, I just interviewed the folks who did the Easy Bitcoin app. Easy Hotel, Easy Jets. They're like they do jets, easy flights and hotels, democratizing access. They just started their own credit company.
Yeah.
They have distribution, they have
That's
users,
right.
and they're turning into kind of a neobank.
That's right.
And it's like, oh, where did that come from? Enabled by the new infrastructure. Unattainable in the old way. They have to go through an intermediary, go get set up. But the visionary manager's like, whoa, I have all these users. Here's an app.
Going to monetize it. And I think
provide value.
Yeah, and that's what's happening now with Tempo and Stripe and Google launching their own L1, as I mentioned, and then Circle having their own. But again, here's the thing: it's you've been around the block. You know that open source is the way. Open networks are the way, and this is where protocols like Ethereum come in place. And for me, I've seen it over and over again. I mean, even in the early days of sending an email within the company, right, and now sending it to somebody outside was a bit scary because you didn't know how that worked. And so we kind of obviously went across that hurdle. But I think open source is the way, and I think this is where that decentralization comes into play. And I think it would be crazy for this government not to continue to push, as they've been pushing, on adoption of Ethereum as a decentralized network, as a backbone of our infrastructure.
I mean, open always wins. Everyone who watches theCUBE knows we have a huge open source background. We love open. We're open content.
That's right.
But open requires an ecosystem.
Yes.
Ecosystems are super critical. And with Ethereum and entrepreneurship and money, programmable money, money store, is the perfect innovation storm. Every theater is popping with innovation.
That's right, I
mean, this is a great time. Okay, so advice for entrepreneurs. I'd like to get your thoughts because I think you're a dot connector. You've always been connecting dots. You're a trailblazer. From the time seeing payments to Bitcoin, not a lot of people put that together. So that's huge. So a lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, how do I contribute? And if I'm an entrepreneur, how do I create value and capture that? And I was riffing with another guest and they said, well, figure out the ideal steady state of the future. Where is it easy to use? Where is it not hard? How is it simple? What's your reaction to that? If you were going to do a start, let's just say we were in college and we're riffing, what would we do? What would you do if you were going to do a startup right now from scratch? If you were, fresh, ready, motivated?
If I had an experience in, let's say, TradFi financial system, as you said earlier, I'd probably go hone into a problem that is quite big in that department or vertical of a business, and I would go solve for that problem. One of the problems in crypto technology is that there are a lot of devs, but there's, and they build a protocol and then there's an empty room, and so they're looking for a solution. But I would say if you have experience in payments or anything related to that, this technology provides such an incredible way to build on that. And AI as well. I think finance is already disrupted by AI, travel industry disrupted by AI. We don't have to wait anymore. And in the next 2-3 years, other industries will be as well. And so I think having machine-to-machine communication in manufacturing is a fascinating way to also disrupt. And future work in general. So I think
it's funny you mentioned digital twins earlier, because one of the things we cover is AI, physical AI. NVIDIA is big on that. Quantum's right around the corner. The convergence of those two, and you mentioned AI and blockchain working together. You just mentioned it again. In AI and in blockchain and DeFi and TradFi, you know what the common thread is, besides power, being bounded by power, is that people with domain expertise actually have an advantage.
Yes, that's right.
On both fronts. You mentioned the use case. That seems to be the common thread. If you have a domain skill and see business logic,
yes,
the technology's coming up to the table.
Yes.
You don't have to go build it and be client zero.
Yeah, because you almost have all the technology we need right now. To your point, you just have to understand what the business methods are, or where you're trying to take that business, or what your customer is, what's the underserved customer, and then technology is already there for you.
Mike, great to have you on. A final point for you. Give a plug for what you're working on. What are you excited about? What's your to-do list? What's your goals? What's going on with you?
Yeah, thank you for having me again. I think I believe that the next stage of evolution, you brought it up earlier, I think it's absolutely correct, is we've gone from ICOs into kind of DeFi, now into treasury vehicles, and who knows what this is going to evolve into. We've certainly built an incredible team. Our team comes from TradFi. These are guys who understand merchant banking, operating businesses, technology, reinsurance, right? Everything that could potentially be tokenized. And there are many of these vehicles out there. I would say there is a space for a couple of really strong teams. And why would you put all your eggs in one basket when you can invest in teams that have been around for so many years and understand this and are not going away? This is extremely important for us. We see Ethereum as the backbone of the new tokenized Wall Street. And I see it as a backbone of a lot of stable coins, and so we are really excited about that.
Tokenizing Wall Street, the Trailblazers are here. You're a Trailblazer. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank
Crypto
you.
Trailblazers here on theCUBE. We're doing our part to blaze the trail and share the data and information with you. Again, so many big opportunities as the world shifts into tokenization, real world assets. We already have a physical digital convergence. It's getting coded up, and the technology is available for entrepreneurs and also big business. So we'll keep covering it. I'm John Furrier. Thanks for watching.